Hey, what is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Knights of Last Call Not actual play. So yeah, if you came here expecting to see some Rise of the Runelords action, I'm sorry to disappoint, but we had some issues crop up in the Knights. Everybody is okay, but we had a member of the Knights who happened to have a family emergency. Everyone's okay, as I understand it. And everyone's going to be okay. But unfortunately, we would not be able to have the whole crew. And so, oh, hey, thank you. Thank you, Victor. Thank you. Early donation because I can't make the stream today. Have fun. Thank you, Vin. Appreciate that, of course, as always. Sorry you can't make the stream, but you know, hopefully you're there Thursday because we're going to be back to talking about spells and magic, and we got level 2 to finish up, and then we're on to level 3. Well, we have to finish up the divine and arcane, or divine, occult, and primal, but that always takes like one episode, so it should be fine. So yeah, my calendar was free here, and so why not go live, right? Why not have a live stream and take a look at that. Good to hear. Glad to hear that you will be there. So good evening, Frank. Hey, welcome to Ireland. Welcome from Ireland. Top 10 Knights of Last Call moments. Anthony, just describe what you mean. Appreciate that.
Stephen tipped $2.50, $2.50. Was the sniping big difference? Smiley face. Glad to hear everyone is okay.
Yes, thank you for the tip. $2.50 was the difference. In case you want to know what Stephen is talking about, you know, one of the things about the Knights of Last Call is we are into a lot more than just Pathfinder 2, and we are also into some of the more esoteric and strange games. And one game that has a pretty big following amongst us here at the Knights of Last Call is Torchbearer. And during the pandemic, a Torchbearer 2nd edition was kickstarted, and it's just started actually being released here over the last few months. Kickstarter people have been getting their tips. Kickstarters. I forgot to get it, and I love Torchbearer, and I really wanted to get Torchbearer 2nd edition. And so, you know, you had to go to the Bay. You had to go to eBay to try to get this 4-volume book cover. And, you know, I put some bids in, and I was getting outbid. Well, it turned out during our Patreon live stream yesterday that the people who outbid me and were bidding against me were also members of my Patreon. And the winner, the ultimate winner, was Steven, who outbid us all and won the book. And now, if I want one, I'm going to have to go and buy the $250 one. And that's going to be pretty pricey. But I do get an extra copy of the book. It comes with 2 copies of the book, and maybe I can I don't know, sell or give one away. So I'm you know, it was just funny that we were outbidding each other and kind of, you know, taking it as London. We can take turns controlling their characters. Highest tip takes the wheel for 10 minutes. That's not the craziest or silliest or dumbest idea I've ever actually heard. Obviously this happened right at the last minute. But you know, I think we want to try to maybe figure out something that we can do to try to keep the game going. Or if somebody has to take a week off, you know, maybe a vacation or someone, you know, has a plan where they want to step out. And it's always better to have somebody else fill in the table. And for right now, for the time being, we are virtual. We are on Foundry. And hell, everybody in our Patreon is already a member of our Foundry Forge VTT. So that makes it really easy to try to find a replacement. And so that, London, we might actually do that. Or we could just do random chat tips that, you know, help control everything. I actually figured out recently, I think I can use polls in YouTube. Who knew? So Blueberry Detective asks, so when are we going to see you write a book? Maybe Knights of Last Call, Taverns and Treasures. You know, that does seem to be the name of the game these days, isn't it? Writing a book. I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, but long before I ever had a YouTube channel, I've always sort of dreamed of you know, expressing my ideas in a written form. I think, and I think a lot of you would understand this and appreciate this. I think my biggest concern is I love this hobby. I love this game. all these games. And I just want to make sure I would do it right, you know? It would be super critical to me. Like, I've played games and I've played products and felt this wasn't 100% there, you know? Good idea, solid recipe, undercooked, underbaked. In fact, a lot of products, I've even said this in a lot of my recent product reviews. Great recipe, great idea, poor execution, undercooked, underdeveloped. And so I think my biggest concern there is just making sure that I do right by the game. Customers, clients, you know, patrons, whoever, they're very important too, but I want to do right by the game itself. I want to create something that's not just more of the same. We have a review coming out for Battle Zoo Bestiary. I thought it was great. Spoiler alert. Thought it was a great bestiary, and I don't really like bestiaries, but we've seen that before. You know, you're not really changing up the way people play the game, and I think that's kind of what I kind of want to do. I will say that having access to over 100 gamer crazy people in the form of our Patreon and our Discord is a tremendous resource that I would have never in a million years ever dreamed of having in the past, that gives me a lot more confidence to try to tackle something like that in the future, because not only would I have access to incredible writers, designers, developers, but just an army of vicious playtesters who, and if you're a member of our Patreon, you know this, our Patreon is not a cult of personality. I am not some guru that everybody worships. In fact, a lot of times people shit on me and tell me that my ideas are bad, which is great, right? You know, checking me and saying, hey, that's not the best way to do that, and I disagree with you. And I think that you need a community of people, of playtesters and editors who don't just go, I love everything you produce, right? If someone says, I love everything they produce, I'll buy anything you make, it's like, okay, I don't have some standards, you know, and be willing to be critical. And luckily, my Patreon is very critical. So, you know, it's pretty good stuff. Obi-Wan Kenobi's in the chat. Hello there. Just kind of get through the quick chat here. Couple things, real quick before I get into this. Excuse me. But you'll see we have a tip goal. That's not for tonight. That's just like, you know, a tipping goal for me personally, sort of in my individual streams. My spells and magic. But you'll see that it goes up for the stream elements tips. So super chats are extremely appreciated, and I will thank you and I will love you very, very much. But stream elements basically doesn't take any money out from your donation. So if you want your donation or you want your tip dollar to go the absolute furthest, and you don't want big man YouTube to be taking some of the money that you wanted to go to the Knights and our next round of craft brews, you please use the stream elements. There's a link in the description below, or you can type !tip in the chat, and the chat bot should show you the link to go ahead and give us a tip there too. Just, I know it's an extra step for you, but basically YouTube takes 30 cents out of every dollar that you super chat to us or to anybody, and why give them that money? They're not doing anything here. We are. Damien asks, when are you going to do an L5R live stream series? Well, that would be a very interesting thing, because, right, we already do a Pathfinder 2 live stream series, and Pathfinder 2 is already a pretty niche game in a market dominated by Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. L5R is even more niche, but it is probably one of my top favorite games right now. In fact, it might be number one in terms of like games that I'm just, it fluctuates day to day, week to week, but right now I just really, really love the Legend of the Five Rings game by Fantasy Flight Games, now owned by Edge Studios. And it would be really, really cool and fun to bring that experience to other people. One of the things, like, again, math here, right, folks? Like, our YouTube channel's not big. I mean, we have for several thousand subs. Everybody who watches is amazing, incredible, awesome. But the net of it is, like, on YouTube, you don't make any money unless you have like tens of thousands of subs. So the way we make our money, the way that I kind of maybe make some money off of all of this, is basically through tips and donations and through our incredible Patreon, which basically frees me to kind of do whatever I want and screw YouTube. So the people here with us tonight watching, the people in our Patreon who are supporting us, like, really, those are the people who I'm most interested in kind of keeping happy. So if Damien, if everybody wants to see Legend of Five Rings, I mean, I'll do it. I played every other Friday. I actually messed around a little bit. There's someone's making one for Foundry, a Legend of Five Rings interface system, and it's pretty good too. It's not great. It's not. I'm spoiled after using the Pathfinder 2 interface, which is just so incredible. But it's pretty good. And the dice, the roll and keep method is pretty good there. Knights of Last Call, Dungeons Before Dragons. It's true. I'm a big dungeon fan, man. Dungeons are so good. I know we need to get back to Night School. I was kind of sad that Night School never really got a ton of views the way that I thought it was going to get. And I really thought that we were going to get a lot more interaction, a lot more YouTube push through that, especially because it was fairly generic. It wasn't necessarily a Pathfinder 2 video, but I do love dungeons. Bloop. So, Steven, thank you.
Steven tipped $7.50. Screw the man. L5R sounds awesome.
It is awesome. It is awesome. And actually, I got a story to tell, a Legend of Five Rings story. DC Octopus, what do you think of Call of Duty Ghosts? I don't really play video games anymore. I kind of stopped playing video games, mostly because they stopped being challenging to me. They started being more like interactive movies and interactive stories. And for that kind of experience, I kind of just like to go to the movies. I used to play a lot of video games, but when I kind of came down to it, as I kind of aged into my 30s, I stopped buying all the new consoles, and I really just started playing more tabletop role-playing games, and that's kind of what I did. And I used to be a big RTS fan. I still sometimes watch on StarCraft 2 videos on YouTube. And of course, I used to play a ton of Magic the Gathering. I was like trying to be a pro Magic player. There's a couple videos out there on YouTube of me in various top 8 tournaments and stuff like that, usually losing. But hey, I made it to the finals. But it's that kind of sucked up a lot of my life. I used to travel 25 weekends a year, driving all around the country or up to Canada, a couple flights to the West Coast or down south, just to play Magic the Gathering paper tournaments. So that was really what defined my 30s. And then by the time I kind of got out of that, after playing at high stakes Magic the Gathering tournaments, like just playing video games just didn't have the same thrill for me as it used to. And also everyone was so much better than me. And so I didn't want to put the time and effort. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it. I want to be good at it. And so I just didn't want to put the time and effort into being good at it. So right now, I don't really play any video games. I sometimes watch StarCraft 2 on YouTube. If I'm feeling really, really bored and I really want to waste time, I watch people like Savich or Kriparian play Hearthstone Battlegrounds at ×2 speed, and I kind of enjoy the sort of the mindlessness of that. But that's really about it right now. Anthony, I don't know if this has been discussed before, but what does your GM set look like? Do you use OneNote, Drive, Legend Keeper? Also curious about tools for making content a la maps. My main thing that I use is Trello, which is a project management software. I use that for a lot of my sort of, GM things nowadays, just to kind of keep things organized and sort of to think of ideas and keep, stuff sort of organized. I used to use OneNote a lot before I discovered Trello. Trello's online and just a lot easier. It's not Microsoft. And there's some pretty good apps for it for your tablet or for your phone. But I used to use OneNote a lot. I used to have just a ton of folders and lists, and I would just keep all sorts of stuff in OneNote. But remember, too, that I tend not to over-prepare too much. I like to stay loose. I think that prep is good, but I feel like sometimes prep also can trap you. And some of the tools that Pathfinder 2 gives you, especially like the second version of the Game Master's Guide screen, which has all sorts of systems and DCs and value damage expressions on it, is really good for sort of emergent play. So also curious about tools for making content a la maps. Well, okay, so real talk. I tend to just use graph paper with paper and pencil. And it's actually kind of crazy, right? Because like actually right here on my desktop, like I have like a several Wacom tablet from like my photo editing days. And I just never got into, I never really got into like the Incarnate or the Dungeon Draft, the Wonder Draft, or any of those other map making softwares. I think they're really cool and I think they're really pretty, but I usually just kind of sketch it out on graph paper. Honestly, I kind of do it old school in that way. So, and sometimes I would actually, it's over here, but I have a big flatbed scanner. I sometimes would just draw maps and then put it on there and then scan it and use it that way. So it's kind of, you know, it's kind of old, but I think organization is important. I think it depends on what you want to do with your thing. And I mean, also at the end of the day, notebooks work, you know, fine as well. Luke, hey, how's it going? Hopefully you're doing well. Amber Phoenix, top 10 dumbest things in the rules. Perry has a manipulate trait. Yeah, there's some dumb things in the rules. Even some things that I understand why they do, like, you know, if you raise your shield and then you get behind a pillar, it doesn't actually improve your armor class because it's all circumstance bonus. It's like, well, so I'd rather have a shield than be behind. If I'm totally visible, okay, if I'm totally visible, like just like I am right now, and I go behind a pillar, you know, and I'm kind of peeking out at you, so I have cover, and I make a stealth check against your perception DC, I get a +2 bonus to that because of the cover, circumstance bonus. But if I turn completely magically invisible, and then I make a stealth check, I don't get a +2 bonus. But if I'm invisible and I go behind that pillar, technically I have cover now, and I would get a +2 bonus, even though you can't see me regardless. Anyways, fun stuff. Thanks, Elway fan. I appreciate it. Michael, I'm happy you found this channel too. You know, I don't know what niche we fill, honestly. We're kind of a weird channel. You know, we're, our Patreon, our community tends to push a little older. I'm going to be 40 later this year. And there's a lot of people in their 30s and 40s and stuff and into their 50s in our Discord. And, you know, I have an old school bend. I grew up, you know, technically the first edition of D&D I ever played was like first edition. My cousin introduced me to the game, but mostly I played second edition. I love third edition, played that, fourth edition, fifth edition. But I also love, you know, Blades in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse games like Monster Heart or Dungeon World or, you know, Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Like, when I go to Gen Con, I spend most of my time in the Indie Games on Demand room playing new indie games that developers are sort of playtesting or they just released them, or stand by old favorites like some of the ones I listed. So I have a very strange palette of sort of old and new, and it kind of melds into a style that isn't easily described or makes any sense. So if you enjoy that, well, awesome. I think what it does is it gives me perspective, right? I played, you know, I made characters that had, you know, THAC0, and I can tell about, you know, rod, staff, and wand saving throws, and I've played like that for a very long time. But I also love, you know, narrative gaming systems like Fate or Legend of the Five Rings. So, you know, it all kind of melds together. Luke, question. Any tips on how to do flying airships, like how fast they can move? Also, any tips on flying airship combat? Well, the thing about flying airship combat is you really have to decide what are you trying to do here? Are you trying to have airships fighting each other? Or are you trying to have like more like boarding actions where you have airship and then another airship and they're sort of, you know, it's almost like a one battlefield where there's just two airships separated by maybe a space of air. Because if you're going to do like airship to airship combat, I think you just kind of boil the ship down into just being a monster, right? It has an armor class. It has a fortitude save. You're shooting cannons at it just like a ranged attack. And you move around on the battlefield and you can introduce additional, you know, complications or issues like maybe turning, you know, and I think the GMG has pretty good rules for vehicle combat and stuff like that. The only downside of doing something like that is in a game, especially like D&D or Pathfinder 2, Luke, is, there's not a whole lot for everybody to do. And it could be a little wonky to be like, oh, you man the cannons, so you'll make all the checks to shoot the cannons, and you'll man the helm, and you'll make all the checks to steer the ship or try to do maneuvers, which is fine, but you do have to really bring in a lot of additional subsystems, which either you need to create yourself or you have to find a book that kind of details and describes them. I think that D&D and Pathfinder 2 don't really do that as well. And so I think the idea of, hopefully these people are high level, but I would much rather do sort of like, 2 airships on like one battle mat. And, you have people swinging across to the other airship. You have people casting fly spells or turning into air elemental forms and zipping across, and sort of, maybe you have them on the battle mat, but you can move them. So sometimes the distance gets closer and further. And then, the other ship releases a cannonade and there's sort of an environmental effect. And you can make it as simple as just a bunch of fireballs kind of ripple across the deck of one of the airships that the party is on. I think playing into the heroes as sort of these individuals with their spells is a much better way of handling that, because this game isn't like a sci-fi game which has much more detailed rules for things like that. So yeah, I would definitely say that. Question, which system would you prefer to write it for, the book that is? It's a good question. If I was to do a supplement book, like a book of something, I would probably do Pathfinder 2, just because it's where most of my expertise is currently, and it's also where a lot of my following is, and I think that my audience would like to see a Pathfinder 2 book, and quite frankly, Pathfinder 2 is one of those games that I talked about that I think is undercooked. I think there are the design of the game is immaculate, but I do think that there are areas of the game, certain aspects of the spells system, certain aspects of the way that focus points could have worked and don't work, the skills feat section entirely, some of the ancestry components just don't work as well as they could and don't have as much depth as I think they could. And I think, quite frankly, a lot of people want to see depth there. I think the stuff that, no offense, if you're playing them, that's fine. I played a Magus in my last Pathfinder 2 game. He did die, RIP. But all the stuff that Pathfinder 2 has released so far has predominantly been classes. And we have classes and Lost Omens books. And quite frankly, that's what I could kind of care less about. Like, we had enough classes with the archetype rules. Like, I just don't need any more classes. I didn't need the gunslinger. I didn't need the inventor. I didn't need the witch. I didn't need the investigator. I didn't need the swashbuckler. I'm not going to need the scion or the thaumaturge. Like, I want different ways to interact with the game. I want more, like, I do like archetypes. I think those are really cool. I would love a book of archetypes. And like, they do these Lost Omens books and they'll like throw an archetype in there in the middle of nowhere, and it's not even in the index or the table of contents, and it drives me crazy. Luckily, they always put it on Archives of Nethys. But I think that's a much cooler way to expand the game, because I would rather, like, so, because like something like a SWAT, like something like maybe Paizo didn't appreciate how many people were going to play free archetype. I know that some people don't, but like, okay, I'm going to skip down really quick because I see the chat. Like, Damien says that really hurts my heart. I love the inventor class. I will actually say that the inventor class is probably one of the ones that maybe should have been its own class. Okay. But like something like swashbuckler or witch feels to me like it should have been an archetype of just like maybe like a more involved archetype. And, whether you're playing a traditional archetype rules where those things are replacing class feats, or it's like an alternate class feat where, but you can basically swap out fighter abilities for archetype abilities. I think that would be much cooler. I think part of the problem with that is, and actually No Nat Ones kind of touched on this. He didn't have a good solution for it, which I thought, he could have gone into that a little bit more, but he talked about how the fighter +2 attack problem really paints Paizo into a corner. And I actually completely agree with him, because in order to make a class that has different mechanical features, you have to make a whole new class because all of your numbers and structure, the backbone of your character class, are sort of linked in to that spine. And so if you wanted to do a class that has some sort of different mechanical component that isn't just fluffy feats, right? Because we all like feats and class feats, but for the most part, they don't really change like the core nature of your class, right? Basically, if you're going to do that, you have to make a whole new class. And you know, I just think that it's just a problematic issue to have to try to deal with. James says, I'm sorry, I got to disagree. Like the closest class to the witch would be sorcerer, and you have to rehaul the entire sorcerer. Well, actually, I would say it's the wizard, because the witch is a prepared caster. So, I mean, short of changing your spell book into a familiar, giving them a few different familiar feats, and then giving them a couple of focus powers, and all the focus powers work off of the same pool anyways. They're pretty much interchangeable. If you basically did that, if you improve the familiar, gave them these sort of your hex powers through a focus system, and that, I mean, that's basically a witch. So anyways, yeah. So that is, I would probably do PF2, but I don't know. Part of me would be interested in almost like creating my own RPG system, or maybe just like a variant of an RPG system. I mean, if I wanted to make money and like not waste my time, I would do it for 5th edition D&D, because I mean, come on, that is the place to do it. And also too, like, designing for 5th edition is a lot easier than designing for a game like, you know, Pathfinder 2.
Bad Boy Billy tipped $10. So for my Monster Hearts character, should I go something like Spike from Buffy, or more like Oz?
Those are both great options. You know, the werewolf playbook is very interesting, but so is the vampire. Those are both very interesting thing. I think you'd have fun with the werewolf playbook in a Monster Hearts game. It's sort of like dealing with the balance between civilization and nature, your human side, which can care and love, and then your werewolf side, that primal side that is threatening to overcome everything with rage, and playing off of those two completing elements, I think is a lot of fun. So I would go with Oz. PF2 Foundry is leagues ahead of all the other Foundry systems in terms of how many commits. Yeah, no, it's, and to be fair, I didn't really notice that until I started playing some of these other systems. It is pretty crazy. London says, oh man, Night School episode 2 is so good. It helped me conceive of overland travel through a marsh, even though it's not a dungeon per se, but it still has boundaries and areas of interest. Exactly. Dungeon isn't just a place, right? It's a state of mind. It's a concept. It's the idea of how can you structure a place so that as a GM, you can still have prep and still have definition and still have boundaries, but yet also give your players options. And one of the things that we're going to cover in Night School 3, when we get to it and we start talking about the map, is to think of a dungeon map or to think of a point crawl, because what you're describing there, London, is usually called a point crawl, as a game board, right? And this is a game first. It's everything else comes second. You know, I mean, if all you're going to do is sit around and talk in character and play off your personalities, you could be playing tic-tac-toe for that. You don't need a good system. But if you're going to play the game of Dungeons and Dragons, if you're going to play the game of Pathfinder 2, then you really need to focus on the game board element. And I think a good dungeon is just like a good game board, right? A good example of a bad game board is like Chutes and Ladders, or Candyland, where it's literally just, you know, a straight line path that just zigzags up to the end. That is a bad game board because that game board isn't interesting. There's no fun ways to make decisions. A good game board would be something like Axis and Allies or Risk, which are obviously, you know, depictions of the real world, but how they connect the different territories together so that some territories have a lot of strategic value and other territories may not have much strategic value, but could potentially have strong economic value.
Tic-Tac Billy tipped $10. So for our tic-tac-toe campaign, should I go X or O?
Well, you go X because then you go first every time. So that's an easy one. Thank you, by the way, for those tips. Very, very appreciative. Thank you. So I'm happy to hear that the concept is important, but I think building a dungeon isn't just about building an actual physical dungeon underground where you fill it with monsters. It's about thinking about game design, your session design, kind of almost more like a board game designer, where you're thinking about how do I make this an entertaining and exciting play experience if this was just a game? Because if your game is fun just as just a game, and then you add on top of it all of like the awesome benefits you get for playing a role-playing game, like having real feelings and real emotion and real attachment and having sort of that freedom to sort of explore the space and come up with non-linear solutions and kind of go outside the box and come up with sort of paradigm-breaking concepts and solutions to problems, then you take what was already awesome and you just add an extra layer of awesome on top of it. So DC Octopus is coming in with all of the suggestions for ways that we can make interesting titles. Top 10 worst movies. Well, most of the DCEU ones, I thought all of those were pretty much terrible. Yeah, Anthony, we use Trello. I was going back to my Trello statement, but we use Trello for a lot of our RPG stuff. And we've done campaign creation on there, especially good for collaborative stuff as well. Hello from Deadly D8. Nice to see you again. James Beck, nice to see you as well. Awesome. I'm happy to see you as well. We loved our Deadly D8 collab, and I wish we could do it all again. Been binging all of Knight's Class Call today while working on projects. Just finished the 5e versus 2e rewatch. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question to ask. What is my favorite home rule to use? Well, in Pathfinder 2, it's definitely my hero point rule to make hero points just increase the level of success. But I think if you look at all of my previous games, which mostly have been Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder 1, most commonly the home rule that I will use the most often is I will figure out whatever my campaign is about and what I want it to be about. And then I'll also figure out what my players are interested in. And this is like even before the game starts. And I will figure out ways to mechanically incentivize that behavior in my campaign. So if I'm playing a dungeon-based game where the party is going to be doing a lot of a dungeon-based adventuring, I am going to figure out ways that I can reward them and encourage them mechanically to do the things that I want them to do. And vice versa, if there are things that I know that they want to do, then I will also reward them for that. And that usually means, in these games, treasure and experience, but it can also mean advancement or other abilities outside of what the game would consider to be normal or legal. So a great example of this is, even though this is something that hasn't been around since the 1980s, if I'm playing a dungeon-based game and I want it to be about exploration, well, then I might, and finding treasure, then I'm going to award XP for treasure. And not just like a little bit of a bonus. I will say most of the experience in my game is going to come from treasure. So when you go and find treasure, you're going to get experience. Or if I want my game to be about exploring and discovery, then I will make sure that those are the ways that you get experience, and that when the party goes and explores and does things, our goals are aligning. The party is doing what I want them to do, but not because I told them to do it. They're doing it because they're just motivated by their own self-interest. And that self-interest now aligns with what I want the game to be about. And so by leading them with a carrot instead of beating them with a stick, it just works out a lot better. So I always look for ways to figure out what I want out of the game and what my players want out of the game, and make sure that the game's reward systems align with that. So that is something, I don't know if that's a house rule, but it's more of like a state of mind. So I'm kind of backed up here. Sorry if I don't get to your question. I will try. I mean, this is America. If you tip or super chat, I will try to answer your question right away. But otherwise, I'm just going to take them in the order in which they came in. So I see in the chat, Edward P said, I love the Jacquet article, one of my favorites. We're reading about, they talk about the Alexandrian. Yeah, Janelle Jacquet wrote Caverns of Thracer, did the maps for that, and that article is fantastic. And I would love to do a whole series just about that concept. Kind of leading into it with our night school stuff. But yeah. Do you GM with the philosophy, Kendall asks, do you GM with the philosophy of combat as sport or combat as war? If it's war, how do you do that well in Pathfinder 2e? Great question. Traditionally, historically, it depends on the game. When I was playing 3rd edition in Pathfinder 1, it was almost always combat as war. In fact, there were plenty of fights in Pathfinder 1 where, I mean, I could just think of a couple off the top of my head. There was a room, it was full of like animated torture equipment, animated Iron Maidens, opening and closing, trying to eat the party, and animated, chains and whips. And the party basically cast like a hemispherical wall of stone around themselves, and then used stone shape to make little arrow slits. And they had a ranger who had enough feats that they never took penalties to their shooting through cover. And basically they created a bunker in the middle of this room. And these animated objects weren't intelligent. And I just said, okay, we don't even need to roll dice. Like, you destroyed them all. They're beaten. They're destroyed. Smart idea, well executed. We're not even going to roll. Like, you just had a better plan and you win. That really works well in Pathfinder 1. When we played 4th edition D&D, I tended to play it more as combat as sport, where this was more of a game, because I wanted the choices and all the sort of debating that you're doing about choosing one power or one feat over another. I want that to matter. And I would say, actually, Kendall, that friction between liking both of those styles of play is one of my personal demons that I deal with as a GM and as a player, is trying to figure out what sweet spot I want in a given game for the balance between those two. Because, I like board games that have well-defined rules. I like Magic the Gathering, which has well-defined rules. And part of the fun of that game is it's like a puzzle, trying to figure out how to win with the confines of these rules. But at the same time, part of the reason I play role-playing games is to think outside of the box and to come up with interesting and cool solutions, so that it's not just a normal game. But I also understand that when I do that, it can sort of take away from the importance of making all those other choices and decisions, which a game like Pathfinder 2nd edition has tons of those. And so I think it is important to understand that what the game is trying to tell you to say. So to that end, I think Pathfinder 2 very much leans more towards combat as sport. That being said, if it is war, how do you do that well in Pathfinder 2nd edition? Well, I think the best way to do it is to kind of use my hero point system, which is simply to say, and again, this isn't my system, it's Pathfinder's system, I'm just applying it in different ways. Pathfinder 2nd edition has a lot of instances in the rules text where every player gets some sort of ability where their saving throw will say, if you roll a success, it's treated as a critical success instead. If you roll a failure, it's treated as a success instead. But there are also some abilities, monsters and spells, that might say something like, if they make a save, treat their save as one category worse. You'll see that in certain afflictions, diseases, certain monster abilities. I think with the way you could bring that into Pathfinder 2 is if people come in with a really good idea or a really solid, strong plan, or a bad one, then what you can do as a GM is say, okay, well, that is such a good idea. You all are so well equipped for this ambush that you all can make your stealth checks, but treat your category of success as one category higher. And in the first round of combat, treat all of your attacks as one category higher, because you have such an advantage. So basically, no one's going to miss, more or less. Tons of people are going to crit, and it's going to feel like this overwhelming advantage. And don't just give that to them, make them earn it, or because they came up with a really good idea. And you say, okay, that's going to work. That is definitely going to advantage. If they come up with some brilliant way to deliver a poison to a key NPC, villain or enemy, or not, when they go to make their fort save, say, you did such a good job, that NPC is going to treat their fort save as one category lower. Basically almost guaranteeing that it's going to work, and quite frankly, probably going to critically fail. And that could give them the sort of really big effect that they really wanted. The other element that you need to think about is like what kind of conditions are people going to use. So I saw Bruce Cat mention a morale check. I think fighting to the bitter end is pretty common in combat as sport, pretty common in a lot of games, actually, honestly. But I think if the party members understand that this is more of a living world and that monsters and stuff will run away. I mean, like another example to do, I've done this before too. In fact, I did this early in the Rise of the Runelords game. The fighter, Gore, came in with an intimidating strike, and he hit a critical hit against this goblin. And the critical hit, the damage, doubled, killed it. But of course, critical strike would have made him with a crit, with an intimidating strike, frightened 2. But of course, the monster was dead, so it's not frightened 2. But I was like, that just seems like such a wasted opportunity to come in and sort of the lead goblin gets hacked down in one blow with an intimidating strike. And so, yeah, I made all of the other goblins frightened 1. And you could also do that too. Like if you have a lot of monsters, maybe consider using more monsters than would technically be allowed by the encounter budget. But as the party starts to kill some of them, they become progressively more frightened. Maybe you have a threshold that when the first monster dies, all the other monsters become frightened 1. And then all the other monsters eventually become frightened, and then if something else happens, they become frightened 2. And then eventually they become frightened 3 fleeing, which is kind of like the final effect of fear. And that could represent the enemies routing or running away. So I think that... I think there are ways to use the rules of Pathfinder 2 and just apply them in a different way. I got a lot of mileage in my game out of like the doomed and drained conditions to represent certain things. Like that's not just a combat as war. That's like a D&D a game as war. Like in my Abomination Vaults game, I had a wizard who had they were arcane wizard, but they had like an occultist sort of background. And they wanted to make an occultism check to sort of do something really weird to a haunt, okay? And they wanted to make a skill check to try to transmute the haunt and make it so that even though they hadn't defeated the one thing, that the haunt wouldn't return. And I said, okay, yeah, totally cool. You can make your check, but here's the deal. If you succeed, you'll be successful, but you're going to gain the doomed 2 condition until you can actually release the haunt, because that spiritual energy is sort of resonating within you. So a lot of combat as war is about telling your players the price and then asking and just putting tough choices on their plate and saying, okay, I'm here. I'm listening to you. I'm hearing what you want. Here is my offer. Do you accept? It's a negotiation. Now your players might balk, they might balk at that. They might say, that is way too high of a price. And they might say, okay, let me try a different approach. What if we did this instead? And you could say, okay, that does change things. That sounds like a better idea to me. Now the price maybe isn't so steep. It's only doomed 1. And the players go, okay, yeah, we accept that. That is a reasonable price. So tell them the cost and then ask. And then if they don't like that cost, they can either walk away or they can come up with a new way or a new approach or a new idea to sort of try to shift the price of that back in. Now, by written, there is no way in Pathfinder 2 to do this, but I did it all the time. And I still do it all the time, where I will just say you are clumsy, you are drained, you are doomed, you are whatever. And then set the narrative condition that has to occur for them to recover from that. Could be a long night's rest, so maybe it's just something that's going to bother you for the day, or it could be something that's very specifically narratively true. Like you need to accomplish this goal in order to, cure that condition. And then it makes the player say, okay, I'm going to have to interact now with your game to figure out a way to deal with that. So, all right. What board should be made into a movie? What board game should be made into a movie? That's a tough question. What board game should be made into a movie? What movie should be made into a board game? I don't know. Caverna, just because it's like one of my favorite board games, even though it's about a bunch of dwarves that mine in the ground. If you could have an animated TTRPG, sorry, that was a bad answer. I just didn't know. If you could have an animated TTRPG turned into an animated show, which one would it be and what setting would it be in? Kendall, tip $5.
Kendall Carlson tipped $5. That answer was amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the generous tip. I hope that I gave you something there to think about. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole school of thought there that I think is really, 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 really valuable to explore. So James said, if you could have an animated TTRPG turned into an animated show, I think it just means if I could have a TTRPG turned into an animated show, which would it be in and what setting? Probably like Eberron. I think Eberron would be really, really cool. Like Dark Sun. I think that would be really, really cool. I would love to see that world. Oh God, Planescape. Like any of the games that have like a really, really evocative, cool world. I always thought the sort of magic punk style of Eberron and the way that magic was integrated into their reality was really, really cool. Dark Sun, the same way, this sort of burning, harsh world where magic is very powerful, but also very dangerous, which would just be incredible. I think Dark Sun would actually be really cool as sort of like a live action show for sure. But I think Eberron would be cool. I think Dark Sun would be cool. I would love to see Planescape. But something like Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms. It's a great. Okay, we've seen that a million times. We've seen Lord of the Rings. We don't need that again. So in terms of like a TTRPG specifically, because those were all kind of basically Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. Mouse Guard would be cool. I mean, I know there's comics. I don't know if there's actually movies. But like, heroic adventuring mice would be kind of cool. That have to make like, it's not even for children. They have to make like absolutely brutal.
Atomic Hobo tipped $15. Any tips for how a 5e party with no healer or healing spells can maximize survivability? Winking face.
That's a great question, Atomic Hobo, and I'm happy to answer that question. Thank you, Atomic Hobo. Yeah, I think 5th edition is rough, right? Pathfinder 2 specifically tried to address this issue by including tons of classes which have focus powers, which you can basically restore life infinitely, or you can just use medicine checks to recover life. 5th edition is not that case. You have your hit dice, of course, that you can use, but a short rest is 1 hour and isn't always an easy thing to come by. And even then, best case scenario, you're probably only going to be able to recover your hit points maybe once or maybe twice in an entire day. And relying on magical items can be very, very expensive. And so I definitely think that 5e suffers from the problem that some of the earlier editions of the game did, where you're kind of reliant on having a dedicated healer. I would think that, Brutus just says throw in a number of wands of cure light for free. I mean, as a GM, you're sort of folk, and I'm not the most expert 5th edition DM out there. I'll be the first to admit that. But you definitely are between a rock and a hard place, because the real answer is that without a dedicated healer, you basically would just have to go back to town a lot. And I think that you either inside the game, you either need to figure out a way like multi-classing in order to pick up things that will give you, like Amber Phoenix said here, everyone fighter dip for second win, or dip into cleric or some other sort of class that can access some sort of healing spell ability, or I think what it comes down to, and SNS says, no healer 5e is more of a DM problem than a player problem. Your DM has to meet you halfway. That is an interesting way to look at the problem, because on one hand, it's like, is it the GM's responsibility to portray a world, like if a group of adventurers goes forward without a cleric or any means of healing in a sort of realistic world setting, they are going to struggle. That is going to be difficult, right? Like if I decide to go hiking in the wilderness with a bunch of my friends and none of us know how to read a map, right? In real life, it's not like everything is suddenly going to be a straight trail. No, we're just going to really struggle because none of us have that ability. But I think that, I hesitate to just hand wave that like that way. I think that you're sort of undercutting, you're sort of underservicing what the game is trying to accomplish that way. And I think that, for better or for worse, if every time the party struggles, you just change the nature of your game, whether you're changing the way that the rules work or you're changing the type of encounters you throw at the party, you're maybe over coddling them. And I think that that is a solution that it can be problematic. And I think that there is a natural tendency, especially nowadays, to say, hey, nobody has a healer. Okay, great. So then make sure that every monster drops healing potions. I don't know that I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with that statement. I do like Amber Phoenix has a good answer as well. Maybe you can try to find an NPC healer or someone that can help them. I'm also very much about the players taking proactive choices. I will radically re-alter the structure of a 5th edition game if it's player initiated. If a warlock wanted to sort of make a dark pack and create a font of healing that might pay a price in their soul, and it's something that like the party can draw upon to heal from, like that's not me giving that to them. That's the party coming forward and saying, again, we have a problem. Let's come up with something and let's make something. But giving it to them, I think is problematic. So I think as a player, I would engage with your DM and come at it from not from a player issue, come at it from a character issue. Come at it as a character problem. Like, my character is in this world. My character is having a problem with healing. My character is seeking an in-game solution. And yeah, sure, you may have to pull something out of your ass. You may have to homebrew some sort of weird dark energy warlock healing system, but it's going to be player driven and it's going to feel, I think, much more earned. And the player is going to feel like it was a victory for them rather than you just making everything easier for them just so that they can keep playing the game. So that would be my take on that, Mr. Hobo. All right, scrolling back up here. We're talking about the spells here. Investigator could have been an archetype. Talking about this. London says, I'd love to see you redefine the spell list because it seems like you have a practical approach to them. See the discussion on what even is the occult list. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we would definitely have to go back to the drawing board on some of the spells component. I mean, as is, I'm actually kind of loving the Pathfinder 2 spell system. I know some people like to dunk on the divine list. I think it's okay. I mean, I don't think it's great. I think arcane is still probably too powerful, but it's kind of a legacy issue. The occult is a little wonky, but again, the structure is there, right? The mind, the matter, the spirit, the life, like that is all something that I think is really, really interesting. And I would like to play with that more. They have a lot of really cool knobs and levers in their spellcasting system, which they kind of even expanded further in the Secrets of Magic book. And I think there's a way there to make some really fun games. And I would also say, like, again, we've seen this, like there's 88 or something level 1 arcane spells. I think there's 82 level 2 arcane spells. I would be totally fine if there was only like 20 and they were all really cool and they were all very, effective and evocative. And like, it's like, por qué no los dos, right? Like, why can't we have I'm not saying the spell has to be flavorless. Why can't it be both? Why can't the spell be mechanically compelling and an interesting decision to make and also fun to cast and evocative and full of flavor? Like, I think that's fine. I think that's okay. I think that's a reasonable, lofty goal to hit, Oh, Edward P. just discovered the 6 action spells and loves the concept. You guys know that. Horizon Thunder Sphere. It's a good spell. It's fun. And here's the thing is, it's not just that it's a good spell, which it is. It's fun. It's fun to cast. These spells should be fun to cast. And you should be sitting there like going, oh man, which spell am I going to take? It's going to be so cool and so useful. Yeah, James, someone had tipped me a good amount of money. And then I said, oh, okay, you guys want to hear it? And I was like, oh, Horizon Thunder Sphere. And they were like, that was so weak. And so then after the stream ended, this one time I went in and I just recorded it like super, super loud. And needless to say, my roommate was kind of like, what the hell are you doing? I was kind of screaming pretty loud. All right, what else we got here? Listen, everybody can be stomped over as long as you're not the fighter. Like, this is Pathfinder 2 is the apologist version for everything that has come before for martial characters. But the inventor is really good. And the investigator is really good too. Yeah, investigator does what they do too. Inventor is actually really good though too. I do like investigator. Let's see, we're talking about the Alexandrian article. If you haven't read Justin Alexander's articles, you should go read them. The Alexandrian. I think he's called like at Hexcrawl on Twitter. Might be. Let me see. Yep, at Hexcrawl on Twitter. And he has a lot of really cool stuff to say. A little bit old school, but there's a lot of smart game design there too. Brutus, we're going back to this. The animated DC Universe stuff is strangely so good. Yes, it is. I was a huge fan, and still am, of the 2000s era Justice League Unlimited. I loved the Young Justice cartoon series. I would have loved to have seen that continue beyond the number of seasons that they did do. I think they only did 2 seasons, maybe 3, but it was a great show. Stephen Palmer, are there any home rules you would refuse to play with? It's kind of a weird question. Like, sorry about that. Well, obviously anything that would be like really weird and strange and like make me like uncomfortable to play in, I would probably refuse to play in those home rules. I don't know. I mean, here's the main thing. I'd be like, why do you have this rule? Like, I would always just ask the question, what problem are you trying to solve? And is this the best way to solve it? And if it is, sounds reasonable to me. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, like, if you don't agree with the way a game master runs their game, just don't play in it. I just speak out. I've heard good things, London, about Key Largo, and I do need to check it out. If you could port one narrative-based game feature into Pathfinder 2, what would it be? Probably some way of mechanically incentivizing role-playing. Beyond, and I'm not just talking about awarding hero points, which is even then is a little bit vague. I would tie like actual mechanical benefits to not just what you do, but how well you play your character. And I mean, obviously that could vary from group to group, but I think that is a tremendous way to encourage and incentivize role playing. And role playing, again, does not mean, oh, well, hello, what are you doing here today? I'd like to buy some of your finest pecans because I'm making a pie. That's not, I mean, that is role playing, but that's not role playing. I mean, like, when a barbarian who has as, part of their belief structure that they need to tackle the biggest and the strongest, gets into a combat and goes straight for the biggest person in the room, you know? Think of like that final scene in Thor Ragnarok. Spoiler for the 10-year-old movie. In Thor Ragnarok, right, they summon the big demon thing, and the fire giant, and Surtur is going to destroy Asgard, and they're like, okay, and then Hulk comes flying out like smash and starts trying to beat the monster because that's what he does, right? Like when Hulk's player says, oh, we need this big monster to destroy Asgard so we can defeat Hela, the Queen of Death. You know what? That's not what I would do. And also, I want to be rewarded for playing my character appropriately. I'm going to leap in and smash the monster. Yeah. And I think being like, oh, that's awesome, here's a hero point. You know, that's fine. That's a good starting place. But I think we could do better. And I think there are some game systems that do it a lot better. Gabriel says, you know what? My hero points have grown on them. I want to use it on my tables now. It does make for epic moments and feel hero points are truly rewarding. Absolutely. And in fact, if you want to, keep your regular hero points, call them something else maybe. Call them action points or adventure points or luck points. And then you can still award those and still give people the reroll. So you get to kind of keep that same level of balance. And then you can hand out those hero points, those true hero points, those Derek hero points, those Knights hero points, very infrequently for truly heroic, awesome moments. Maybe only award them for when someone really exemplifies their character and they really do something super awesome or heroic or really awesome and funny at the table. And then give that to them, and that's something they can track, and that'll last. That'll prolong from session to session. That is a treasured, precious resource. That is basically a get out of jail card that they can collect, they can cash in, and use. And when the time comes and they pull that out, and it's basically a guaranteed success, possibly even a critical success, they'll feel very, very rewarded by that. Jerry asks, if you could play in an IP with PF2 rules, what would you like? I'd probably say one of Brandon Sanderson's worlds. Sort of. I would say Wheel of Time. I think all the mechanical complexity of Pathfinder 2 could do Wheel of Time really well, and I love Wheel of Time. And they made a 3rd edition version of Wheel of Time, which was pretty good, but I think Pathfinder 2 could do it better. So I'd love to see Wheel of Time. And I say sort of because, of course, Brandon Sanderson wrote the last final 3. Gabriel, I saw some people saying that Arcane was the Eberron of animated shows. I've heard things about Arcane, right? It's League of Legends. I don't really know the League of Legends IP, but it's something to maybe think about checking out. Let's see, what else do we got here? People dogging on the animated Dragonlance. That's correct. It wasn't really good. And I agree, SNS. Legend of Vox Machina might open the door for stuff like this. Maybe. I don't know. Is Legend of Vox Machina popular because people really like animated adventures of kind of TTRPGs, or is it because they really like Critical Role, Right. Top Hat and Teacup coming at us with the fire. I've noticed in your APs, you homebrew a lot of rules in PF2 in order to make the game more enjoyable. How do you go about creating a homebrew rules that will be fun for your players? Well, the first thing is, when in doubt, make the house rule better for your players. Okay, that's usually a good place to start. Typically, when the rules are a hurdle in a way that I feel like is not enjoyable to a player expressing or having fun or getting to feel a certain way at the table, I always decide in favor of the player, almost always. Secondly, is it funny? A great example of this is like Azius in our game, of course, is a giant instinct barbarian. He has an oversized hammer, and thus, per the rules of the game, is clumsy 1 because the hammer's just too big for him. And when you get a large spell cast on you, you become this big hulking brute, and you're probably not used to it, and so you're clumsy 1. Well, when we cast enlarge on him, we were like, oh, you're clumsy 1 again, and we're like, oh, no, they don't stack. And it was like, well, no, wait a second. For the first time in his life, Azius is actually the size that he thinks he is, right? He's got like body dysmorphia, basically. He's finally the size that he thinks he is. And so he wouldn't be clumsy at all. He would actually be able to finally function totally appropriately. Now, why did I do that? Was that because there's some sort of game balance inherent with the enlarged spell versus... No, I did it because it's funny and because everyone thought it was hilarious and everyone joked and laughed, and it's become like a meme on our channel, in our friends group, and that for me is more important than a -1 bone, or +1 to AC. So the answer is, I asked myself, is this house rule going to make the game more enjoyable? And if it's something like quibbling over 1 point or 2 points, I mean, I don't worry about it. I don't sweat it. Worst case scenario, you destroy your campaign and then you just start another one and say, guys, that was a little powerful. But that's probably the worst case scenario, right? Most case likely you would say, okay, guys, that turns out that was only a one-time issue, and the gods of Galarian come down and say, sorry, we're gonna have to put a pin in that. Let's see. Marco says, great answer about Commodus Board, Commodus War. That's why I'm trying to do in my PF2 games. I really appreciate how logic is your thoughts and about our hobby. Really amazing job. Well, thank you, Marcos. I appreciate it. Blueberry says, please don't wander in the woods without a map, Derek. We'd miss you. I did kind of do that, actually. Before starting this channel, I actually spent a few months hiking the Appalachian Trail, and I did not have a map, but I did have a really good GPS, so I guess that counts as a map. So, all right, we're getting almost caught up here. Oh, at least I thought I was. Never mind. Sorry, guys. You guys are chatting away. Yeah, the Horizon Thunder Sphere sound is pretty sweet, I must say. We want to get it animated. We thought about maybe reaching out to the Deadly D8 folks and doing some sort of animation, or, going maybe to Fiverr and paying somebody. I don't know what it would look like, but it would be pretty sweet. Yeah, Top Hat. Synesthesia is a pretty cool spell. It's very powerful. One of the most powerful debuff spells in the game. But it's also pretty fun. It's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. Inventor does step on the Alchemist, but that's just because the Alchemist is a poorly designed class. They are versatile. The amount of stuff they could do is just insane. Agreed. Unfortunately, in tabletop role-playing games, versatility at the expense of power almost historically has never worked out, because it's a party. If it was a single solo player type game, or maybe if you played with just 2 people, then having generalists makes a lot more sense. But the bigger your party is,
GM Scott tipped $6.69. Gotta hear it. Give me some HTS.
You got it. Horizon Thunder Sphere. It would be such a sweet video. It gotta be good. It's gotta be good. Now, the other thing is, of course, what would be an awesome video without, trolling something, right? So we need to find like the worst spell in the game. And then I also need to do the same thing for like the worst spell in the game. Like, I know we have a couple spells that are like F-, but we're like only through level 2. So we've got some time we got to find the truly worst. Thank you, GM Scott, for all of your incredible, amazing support. Very helpful on the Discord as well. GM Scott has quite a bit of experience points from our leveling up rank, even though he's a relatively, newer guy to the channel. It feels like you've been around forever, GM Scott, because you're always chiming in, and I love it. So appreciate you and appreciate what you bring to the channel. Have you ever had Horizon Thunder Sphere fall flat? My GURPS experience tells me players don't like to spend several turns to do one thing. Yeah, I think it comes down to how quickly your group plays. If I'm taking like 30 minutes to get to my turn, I'm probably never going to cast a 2-round version of Horizon Thunder Sphere. But if people are playing snappy and poppy, I think we can get around to it. Oh, I did want to finish what I was saying. Generalists better if you have like smaller parties, 1 or 2 people. But if you have like 4 or 5 people in your party and like everybody is a specialist in a niche, which is kind of the way D&D was originally designed to be, generalists just typically they just fall flat because you have somebody there to cover it and they're just better at it than you. So it tends to kind of work out that way. Thaumaturge did walk in on the Alchemist and Bard, and that's kind of why I really like that class. And they were kind of an example of having a lot of versatility, but also seemingly a lot of power, and I like that. Edward is blowing my mind right now. Young Justice is still getting new episodes. Well, damn, color me surprised. Hey, Derek, how to deal with creative block as a GM? Read fantasy, go buy books, source books, setting books, comic books, buy a TTRPG that you've never played before and just flip through that and say, I'm going to steal this. And I promise you, you'll come up with something. Alternatively, and I would say, if you go to Marcos, if you go to and maybe I'll put something in the description for this for future people, but if you go to my Night School 2 video, Night School episode 2, and I'll also put a link for future people. There is a book called The Tome of Adventure Design, and it is a random idea generator. And 90% of the time, whatever I roll on the table almost never actually ends up being what I kind of do, but it gives me that initial spark of creativity to start pushing me down into a new idea of thought. And I'll be like, I don't know what to make this monster. And then I'll roll on it and it'll say like, I don't know, like Ooze Factory. And I'll be like, oh, okay, Ooze Factory. Okay, I get it. Maybe he's making life. And then it turns out that I end up going with the idea that he's just like making clones of important people, assassinating them and replacing them with his clones. It has nothing to do with ooze, but just that initial thought is what sort of guides me. So the Toad, or the Tome of Adventure Design, is pretty awesome. You can find it on Amazon. We have an affiliate link in our Night School 2 video. So if you want to give us a couple extra bucks, it doesn't cost you anything. Go to our Night School 2 video. There's a link in the description below. Or if you're watching this later, I'll throw a link down below just because someone asked. So Brutus says the first 2 seasons of YJ were amazing. Those are the 2 that I saw, but apparently they got weaker. Tyson, good to see you. I know you've been really busy, so I'm happy you were able to join in. Do you think it would be helpful to give more codified examples of giving circumstantial bonuses, penalties beyond aid, flanking, and cover? Pathfinder 2 tried to kind of get away from the freebies, right? Like, I mean, certainly if someone says, I'm doing something, and you say, that's a great idea, I'm going to give you a circumstance bonus, it's a great way to encourage people to do cool things because they're going to get a circumstance bonus. You run the risk that people might start trying to like fish for them and coming up with weird, wonky ideas. But I mean, even something as simple as if a player goes out of their way to even try to describe what they're doing or provide some element of their character's motivation, and you just give them a +1 circumstance bonus, you're probably going to get a lot of people encouraging to do that. And then if they actually give a really good idea and you say, okay, I'm going to give you a +2 circumstance bonus, well, then you've even gone further down that. I think this is an area where the game is a little lacking. I will freely admit to that. I think that the aid action is cool. The concept of it is cool, but how they implemented it is a little wonky. One house rule that we talked about on the Discord maybe about a month ago, was this idea of like, I don't think I'm going to roll for aid in the future. I'm not really interested in whether or not you hit a DC 20 or a DC 30. I'm more interested in like having the player spend an action on their turn to set up another player and having them contribute to the narrative in a way that makes sense, that then has a cool and meaningful mechanical impact that we can all experience at play or during the course of the play. So my new kind of thought on aid is someone could just spend one action to sort of prepare. And that just means they're like looking around, waiting for an opportunity to jump in and help. They don't have to define who, they don't have to say where, when, who. They basically, it's almost like a ready, but it's only for the aid reaction. And then when an opportunity comes up, when a player is in a situation where this person suddenly has a bright idea of, oh, here's how I could help that, they just say I'm aiding. And we don't bother with the dice roll. PF2 is obsessed with rolling dice for everything. I can't stand it. If you're a master in athletics and the way you describe it is that, you're using your shield to bash someone down and you're a master, just say you get a +3 circumstance bonus. If you're a legend in, Arcana and the fighter is going in to attack a devil and you say, I'm going to speak several words of power to imbue their blade with, energies that are anathema to devils. And you're like, okay, cool. +4 bonus, circumstance bonus from the Arcana aiding you. We don't need to roll the dice. When you roll the dice are a spotlight. Okay. And when it's someone else's turn, when it's like my turn, the spotlight should be on me. And I'm about to roll my dice. Okay. So it's all eyes are on me, all eyes are on my dice. And the way that the aid action works is like right before your big moment. Like you just described this cool thing about how your fighter breaks free from, the lesser devil that he's been tangling with. And he races across the battlefield to engage like the Vrock or the Hezro or those are all demons, not devils, but the horned devil. And raises up his sword and brings it down. And he's about to roll his D20. So the spotlight's on him. And now it's like a secondary spotlight on that dice roll. And then somebody else chimes in and goes, wait, I'm going to aid. And then they roll dice. It like directs the spotlight away from the fighter and over to this person who's rolling another dice roll. Now everybody's looking over at that person's dice roll to see, oh, hey, and like, what are we looking at here? There's like 4 or 5 levels in the game where it's actually an interesting die roll, right? Because in the beginning part of the game, you're never going to crit. And at the end part of the game, you're automatically going to critical. So like, there's only like a couple levels in the game where it's actually a roll that any sort of outcome variation actually even matters. So fuck it, just get rid of it. And then also aid is kind of shitty at level 1 in the game. And aid, I think, is a fun way to interact between your party members. So get rid of it. Just get rid of it from level 1. Just say, hey, if you're trained and someone does something, you just say, hey, I'm going to aid you. It's +1. If you're an expert, it's +2. If you're a master, it's +3. And if it's legend, +4. Oh, that's broken. Someone will just spend an action every turn and they'll just constantly use whatever skill that they're a legend in. Number 1, they were going to do that anyways. Skipping the dice roll doesn't change any of that. And number 2, just put it on them. Say, how are you using that skill? And quite frankly, if they're even trying a little bit, they're already doing, I promise you, they're doing more than like 95% of players out there. So, if anything, you should award them a hero point. So, all right. That's what I had to say about that. City of Mist does have good mechanics for incentivizing role-playing. And a lot of... what's the word I was trying to say? I'm trying to remember who makes City of Mist. Gosh. I don't remember who makes it. I thought they made another game that I really liked. But yes, like a lot of non-traditional, non-mainstream games, there's really good mechanics in those. And my recommendation is go buy City of Mist, go buy Burning Wheel, go buy Monster Hearts, read them, and then say, I'm never going to play this game ever. That's okay. But you're going to find 1 or 2 things that you're going to say, but I do like that idea, or I do like that mechanic. I wonder if I could bring that into my 5th edition game. I wonder if I can bring that into my Pathfinder 2 game, and I think your game will be better served for it. I think the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. Yes, old school games that were just all about rolling dice and killing monsters and like doing nothing, I think are boring and old hat. But the pendulum has swung too far to the other side. Like game sessions where people talk about how all they did was talk in character and they didn't roll dice. I don't think those are interesting either. I think that sounds amazing and incredible, like like having a writing party, a story writing party, but that's not a game. And I think we can actually do better. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm not saying that this is bad. I'm saying we can do better. I think the sum of the parts, the game plus the storytelling, 1 + 1 equals like 3 or 4. And so that's why I love role-playing games so much. It's why I've dedicated now a good chunk of my life to role-playing games, because I believe that they are a medium which transcends all other forms of entertainment medium. So, anyways, moving on. City of Mist is from Son of Oak Studio. Okay. Thank you, Griffin. All right. Well, anyways, I don't own the hardcover. I own the PDFs. And I think it is a pretty cool system. Griffin says, evening all. If you take the approach to the 8 actions as soon as you introduce it, your players will grok the idea right away, and the entire thing will be a better experience. Also a good point. Just get them used to it from the beginning of the game. FFG is pretty good at balancing role play with role play, and I completely agree with you on that. I think they do a wonderful job at that, and most of their games have been pretty good about that. You know, one of these days, I am just going to have to just dive into an alchemist. I am playing at a new Pathfinder 2 game where we level up every session. We can never die. And all of our characters, if we want to make a new character, they're at the same level as everybody else in the campaign. So theoretically, you know, tell me, what's a good level, Brutus? You can tell me on the Discord. Like, what's a sweet spot level for the alchemist? And maybe I'll play him for like a level or two, session or two at that level. Just to really kick the tires, you know. Chef with the crazy question. What are your thoughts on making travel more bearable? That's tough. After some time, some of my players believe fighting boars or random bandits has become dull. Should it be hand waved, or do I need better fights? It is a very complicated question, because if you are just using random encounters and the party is just beating them, you're really just wasting their time. And the problem is, if you're not draining any of their resources, then it's not really interesting either. Random encounters should be seen as a form of punishment for taking or making bad actions. The problem with travel that most people have is it gets reduced down to a series of mostly random dice rolls that the players have very little or no decision-making process in. Essentially, the adventure happens to them instead of them happening to the adventure. And to that end, my advice is, in order to make travel more bearable, give them choices. It's kind of a vague suggestion, but give them an option where maybe they make a check, and if they succeed, they get to choose. Well, you could go through this section of the woods and you pass your survival check, so you see that there's a lot of boar tracks. You're basically telegraphing to them there could be a fight with a boar down this way. Or you could go this other route, which seems to avoid the boar area, but maybe has another issue or another problem. Now the players are making choices. And I always say before, the reason I sit down at any gaming table, especially as a player, is to make choices, to make decisions, and to have those decisions have real, actual consequences, both for my character and for the world around them. And if your travel is just literally you behind the screen or whatever, rolling dice and then just telling the players what happens to them as they walk from A to B, they're not getting to make any decisions. Pathfinder 2, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, does not have a very good system built around this. And as a result, it's kind of something you got to kind of come up with yourself. Another great idea or topic for a future product that we've released. But like, again, I think that, you know, use it to build your story, use it to build the tapestry of your world as well. You know, if they fight bandits, make that something that is an important part of your world. Don't just have literal random bandits. Be like, oh, well, why are the bandits raiding them? And do the bandits have a headquarters nearby? Do the players want to do anything about that? What is the problem? And then, oh, you know, like it spirals out of control. And before you know it, your campaign has gone completely off the rails. And I think that's a completely good thing. And the players are now involved. They join the bandits and they become, you know, obsessed with overthrowing the monarchy, and they become like Neo Robin Hoods, and your whole game is crazy just because of some random encounter with bandits on the road. But decisions, that's the key. Decisions. Players have to make decisions. If your players feel bored, if your players look bored, it's because they're not getting to make interesting decisions. You know, Michael, we could probably just dub HTS with Goku over the Spirit Bomb. And to be honest with you, I don't really like Dragon Ball Z, but that is exactly what I was thinking of when I did the audio. Let's see. London says, Bards should be rewritten as a mystic and be someone who taps into the meta structure of the magic of the universe through song, art, and dance. That meta structure could be chthonic, but not always. I agree. I think the Bard could be a really interesting rebuild. And I know that on our sort of Knights of Last Call product development board, I believe William Brandis has a Bard rework ? After it. I think after our last live stream where I think I talked about why I thought the bard was using occult was a silly class, and something else that I would have liked to have seen the bard do. And I know that at least he was interested in maybe exploring that space. So that might be something that we develop and sort of release as a Patreon gift. But that's future state, you know. Amber says, you've mentioned focus spells being per encounter, but you've never mentioned the limit of 1 per refocus without the additional feats. Are you house ruling that refocus returns all points? I do. Yes, that is a house rule. It doesn't come up a lot because the Knights of Last Call don't really use their focus points. I think those feats that require you to get 2 back or 3 back are horrible. I would get rid of them. They're a feat tax. They are stupid. They are bad. They defeat the entire purpose of focus points, which is just to have this per encounter resource, because now you have to track them just like you're tracking anything else. Like you're like, oh, okay, well, I had 2, but I used 2, so I get back 1, so now I only have 1. And the reason those are there is to prevent someone from like splashing this, splashing this, splashing this, and suddenly they're level 1 or they're level 2 and level 3, and they have 3 focus points in their pool. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, if you're really concerned that someone having 3 focus points by, say, level 4 is a huge problem, don't let them do that. I don't know. It's but I don't even think having 3 focus spells aren't that powerful, and spellcasters need every little bit of help I think they can get. So I'm okay with it, and I just give everybody their focus points back at the end of the encounter. So I think refocus itself is kind of a silly concept as well. I just say you have your focus points back. It's fine. If it really comes down to it and like they want to keep casting the spells over and over again, okay, fine, 10 minutes. But yeah, I just give them back. I think those feats, having to wait and then end up burning those 2 extra feats just so you can get 2 back and then you can get 3 back, they're horrible. I don't like those. And they're not fun. Those feats aren't fun. You're like, well, I've had 3 points in my focus pool forever, so I feel like I have to take these. And you know, I already had to spend feats, by the way, to get my focus pool up to 3, to get spells into my focus pool. Like, I already had to spend feats. Don't make me spend other feats. Those are just feat taxes, and I hate feat taxes. So, yeah, silly, stupid, skip them. Hey, Ben, you're a little late, Ben. You said 9 o'clock. But hey, welcome, Ben. Nice to see you. Blueberry says, I took one piece of advice from one of your videos about social play and had players roll first and then role play why they got the role they did. It has been a lot more fun to engage with social skills. Awesome. Yeah, I think that to me is role playing, right? Where me, Derek, the player, I want to go to the innkeeper and I want to be very polite and I want to make sure that they give us the information about where, you know, the people that were here last night went. But my character rolled low. And why are we rolling dice if not for unexpected events? And instead of me describing this really well thought out approach and then rolling low, and then everybody's kind of in that awkward cringe moment of like, the innkeeper thinks you look stupid. It's like, it always is just painful and it's stupid. Or as a player, you feel like, this is dumb. Come on, let's just skip the dice rolls and just say yes. Well, then why are we playing with dice at all? Right? Don't look at dice as the enemy. Look at dice as your friend. The dice can help you tell a story. And you roll them first and you find out what they want to say. And then it's up to you. The challenge of the role-playing game isn't just to build a character in min-max. It's to take a situation that you may not want to actually have happen, but it is your responsibility as a player at the table to take the events of those dice and make it come to life and figure out your character's motivation or figure out your character's reasoning. And if you roll low, why? And instead of saying my character would never do that, you got to get that mentality out of your mind. Your character did do that. Okay? You have to understand that this false dichotomy has been presented to you, that you, right, are the master of your fate, that you are the captain of your character's soul. You are not. Otherwise, we wouldn't be playing D20-based games. The dice are the captain of your fate. They are the master of your soul, or master of your fate and captain of your soul. okay? They're the screenwriters, not you. You're the actor. Your job is to use what the dice tell you, okay, what script is handed to you, and try to sell or present the best possible story that you can. So this idea that you get to make all the decisions for your character is actually fundamentally flawed. And I'll tell you how I know this is true. The next time that your character is at 0 hit points and is unconscious, try describing how you continue to walk around and attack. Not going to happen. Why? Because the dice stepped in and said, oh, no, you're laying on the ground and you're bleeding out. You don't get to play your character however you want to. The game is constantly telling you what you can and can't do through the application of dice. And instead of fighting that, lean into that. Go with the direction that you want to go with and enjoy the challenges that it presents. So that is my idea. Their choices, boring or boring. I love it. Gain a hero point. Some great questions being asked. If you need more fuel, I would love to hear about your thoughts on foreshadowing and guiding your players. How direct is too direct? You can never be too direct with your players. In fact, I think it's fine sometimes to just tell the players straight out, hey, here's what's happening. Wouldn't it be cool if we all kind of gained in on this conspiracy? I think unless you're specifically playing a mystery-based game, I think hiding information and keeping players in the dark is way overrated. It's way overrated. Your games will, always work a lot better when the players feel like they have an idea of what's going on. And believe it or not, you can sometimes be completely obtuse with them and just tell them straight out what's going on, and they still won't get it. So I think foreshadowing, is something that you can't ever be too, overt with. That being said, guiding your players, don't guide your players, right? Like foreshadow something that you know is going to happen, but then by foreshadowing it, hopefully your players get that is going to happen, and then they're going to either decide to do nothing or to go stop it. And if you're showing something to the players and then they go, well, oh, we got it, we figured out what's happening, we're gonna go stop it, and then you don't let that happen, well, then don't do that. That's also horrible. So be obvious. I saw something in the chat too that Brutus said red herrings are super dangerous. They're the worst. They might work in TV, novel, movies, comics. I do not think they work well at TTRPGs. If you're lucky, if you're very, very lucky, you get 4 or 5 or 6 hours a week tops with these people. It's a social game. We always burn at least an hour or two just bullshitting about whatever, the newest episode of The Witcher or something. We get so precious few moments to play these games. And especially now playing with friends and who have kids and wives and husbands, we might play once a month or once every 2 weeks. I don't have time to be chasing red herrings. Like, avoid them. Let the players know what's going on. If they need to make some checks, let them make some checks. If they need to cast some spells, let them cast some spells. But at the end of the day, make sure that they don't try to obfuscate from them what's going on, and don't try to mislead them, because you want them to be that the fun of the game isn't, are my players going to figure it out? Like if that's the only interesting thing going on in your game, reconsider what you're trying to do with your game. Instead, give them difficult choices. Say, oh, you figured it out, and you can either go do A or B, not both. And maybe your players will come up with some crazy idea to try to do both, and then say, hey, go for it. But now if you fail at both, and give them their options. But if a player is making an informed decision, then they're going to feel like they have a lot of agency. And then win or lose, they'll know at the end of the day that it was their choices that brought them to this moment, rather than feeling like they didn't have any agency and they just ended up here. So, well, David, you're on a roll then. There's a little bit of a lag between when you type something, when I say something, and then I see it, and then it comes all the way back to me. So, the latency is pretty low. I've tried to set it, but, sometimes we're just on the same wavelength. Chef was saying to Total Entropy, leaning into what Derek said about building the tapestry of the world. I think that leaning on more obtuse ideas until players piece it all together is the way to go. Obtuse clues. Yes, sorry. Yeah, I agree. I feel focus points could be stronger because it's usually a feat-based resource. I agree with Crimson Nexus. Yeah, so they are feat taxes. Yeah, I lean way towards more information than not. If I had to choose between my players knowing too much or too little, I will choose too much every single time. Afro Samurai, does anyone have any recommendations for some other TTRPGs that do travel and or random encounters well that someone could try to steal for PF2E and 5E? I mean, I guess it depends on what you want to say is a travel system. I love the sort of the journeys or travel system of Mouse Guard, which is, but it's a very different type of game in how it approaches it. It's instead of like, it's more about like making one hard choice and then sort of proceeding onward. That's a great question, actually, Samurai. I'm kind of struggling to think of any that really jump out well. But I mean, again, I can't say that Mouse Guard does it like perfectly, but I do know that at least it's interesting and it is compelling. But you know, ultimately too, I would say first edition basic D&D, there's a concept there that works. There's a concept there that works because first edition D&D, the wilderness and the travel, it's scary. Okay, like it's scary, and because of that, it's all about the party taking the proper precautions and trying to be ready to encounter anything. And there's a lot of things that some people will talk about. I think I've seen some stuff in this chat today, but like, you know, random encounters don't just have to be fights. It could be learning things about the world, giving them opportunities, giving them a choice. It's more of like a decision moment, right, than a fight. And even if like it is a fight, you know, it's outside, you're not in the dungeon, you're not in the thing. And also, these are creatures presumably the party doesn't have to fight, right? Like if you go to the evil dungeon to defeat the red dragon, like you got to fight the monsters because you're trying to defeat the villain. But when you're out in the wilderness, it's like, well, I mean, maybe these creatures are kind of sort of evil, or maybe they're just animals. But like, if we don't kill them, it's not like the prince isn't going to be sacrificed just because we didn't fight these random encounters. So present it to them as a choice, as the encounter. I mean, sometimes maybe the monster surprises them, but maybe sometimes it's more like you see this monster or this group of monsters a while's ways off. What do? Do you engage them or do you not? And maybe the party says, we don't. But then remember that. They made a choice. And then use that choice to spawn other things that might happen. Maybe in your area or your region, to your village. They see a pack of owl bears and they decide to not engage those owl bears. And then when they get back to town, they learn that, a farmer and his family were almost killed or were killed, depending on how brutal you want to be, by a rampaging pack of owl bears. And now the town is really concerned. And, you know, maybe some party's like, oh, I was going to buy something. Like, oh, all the merchants left because they heard that there were owl bears in the region and they were afraid. So they packed up their wares and they all headed back out west. And you're like, damn it, that was our fault, right? Like we should have fought those owl bears. I mean, again, just make sure that the player's actions feel like they have, consequences. Is that realistic? Not always, but, protagonists in every form of entertainment often have this hyper-inflated sense of impact on the game, on the world around them. And this is no different. Bob says that owl bears are outdated. It's all about the parrot bear now. I got to admit, the parrot bear, kind of stupid, but I kind of liked it. Whoa. We're getting sloppy over here. Yeah, if the party skips killing wandering monster, next time they go back, the monster invade and kill their favorite NPC. You don't have to be that harsh. But maybe, I mean, it depends. I'm just saying, like, everything that the player does and doesn't do should have an impact. And instead of having the game world or the adventure happen to your players, let them be the ones that are sort of, pushing the play, pushing the adventure. Michael asks, what are your thoughts on the scalability problem with higher level characters and how well do you think PF2E handles it? I think it handles it extremely well. And the reason it handles it extremely well is because the math is so tight in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. That has its downsides, but they did do a good job in high level play works. The spells are more powerful. The characters are more powerful, but the math never gets out of line. Your characters will still be challenged and will still be, having to make tough decisions. And because of that, the high level play really does work while still feeling high level, right? With people flying around and turning into huge hulking versions of themselves, right? So it still feels like a comic book, like the end of Avengers Endgame, as high level fantasy these days tends to be, but it still seems to work. So love it. A lot of people talking about Middle Earth role playing and the One Ring for traveling, which makes sense, right? Because, actually, there was a 5th edition version of Lord of the Rings. Hey, Pirate Parrot, welcome.
Pirate Parrot tipped $10. Ahoy, matey. How do you feel about heroes slaughtering sentient monsters to wear their skin and bones as equipment?
I think it's kind of messed up. Yeah, everyone's all about the Monster Hunter thing, and I'm like, these creatures have intelligence. They have they speak multiple languages. Just because they don't have 2 arms and 2 legs, there's been a pretty sizable push, one that I think has some good logic behind it, some good reasons about it, to try to sort of eliminate alignment and sort of be more understanding about the nature of humanoid races. But everybody's still fine with saying, oh yeah, well, this intelligent dragon or this intelligent winter wolf who speaks several languages and has a culture that I'm going to kill it and wear it as a hat. That's still pretty crazy. It's not an animal. It's definitely a person, right? I mean, that's like saying if you took a person, like a human, and you polymorph them into an owlbear, and then that owlbear could speak and talk and, really like poetry, and then you killed it and wore its, feathers as a cloak, that'd be like wearing someone's back skin. So I do not, total entropy. Love it.
Steven tipped $3. Had to do it.
Well, thank you. I total entropy says I personally don't get the obsession with crafting. I don't get the obsession with crafting either. I never have. I don't understand when characters went from being we're heroic adventurers and to I want a 9-to-5 job where I'm toiling away. It's kind of crazy. But thank you. Thank you very much, Steven. I appreciate it. Just because, 69. We're all adults here. It's fine. I get it. It's reasonable. I mean, if it costs you $3 to get to me to 69.69, I'm fine. The only problem now, Steven, is no one's ever going to tip me again because we're at 69.69. What really loves me is that the combination that occurred in order to get us to this level. So, well done, everybody. It's like Twitch plays Pokemon, but it's like the Knights chat plays 12-year-olds. Ben with some really good advice here, too. Random events that alter or interrupt the current trajectory are great and could technically be red herrings. Every event doesn't have to wrap around the PC stories. It doesn't have to be a movie. And that's true. I think what I said there was probably a little overdone because I think there is a lot to be said about giving the PCs a sense that there are bigger and greater things going on around them. And eventually, when I play a Blaze in the Dark game, I want everybody to have so many different options in front of them that they understand we can't deal with all these problems. We can't put out all these fires. And maybe some of these fires, quite frankly, we're not equipped or we're not powerful enough to even put out. We discovered them, but that doesn't mean it's perfect for us to go deal with. And maybe we'll try to do something else. Maybe we can mitigate it. But if our attention is focused here, it's not on these other 2 problems. And that, might come back to bite us in the butt. Talking about the pirate parrot. Let's see. Crafting is ridiculously broken in Star Wars. You can make ludicrously powerful stuff. I mean, I will say this: at least in Star Wars, it is canon that part of being a Jedi is that you craft your own lightsaber. So I could say, and Han definitely was building his own ship. So I mean, you know, in the sense of repairing it. But I mean, other than that, I don't know. It's always been a silly obsession with me. I don't quite understand it. Like I get like making magical items is a cool thing for wizards to do. Maybe I'm biased. I just think it's like a wizard thing, but I don't even like a system like 3rd edition. In order to make a magical item, you just had to have the right feat and essentially know that the magical item existed. And then you spent some money and you spent some experience points, and then you just spent the requisite amount of time, and it was done. And we hand waved it. All this stuff about like gathering all these bits and components and pieces and making checks, and it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a woodworker, but you know, it's like for me, it's like it just seems like a strange thing to try to emulate. That's all, I guess. But some people really like it, and it's very popular in MMOs. So there must be something there that everybody really likes. Maybe nobody actually wants to be a hero. Everybody just really wants to be a craftsman, and everyone secretly, they don't want to be a swinger of the sword or a wielder of the axe. They really just want to be like, I just want to be able to make I just want to be able to carve a duck, man. I just want to be able to like sit down with a blob of clay and just, you know, and a pottery wheel and just turn out a nice vase. That's all I really want. I'm adventuring. I've mastered the sword just so that I could, you know, just so I could
Combat Medic Bush tipped $10.
Thank you, Combat Medic Bush, which is still one of the greatest names of all time. I mean, who would ever see that coming? Thank you very much for the $10 and clearing us from the 69 that we were at. Okay, chef, like being the world-renowned blacksmith who made, you know, Muramasa or Masamune or whatever, like that is one thing. That is pretty cool. But like, you know, everybody just being obsessed with everything else is just kind of strange. I don't know. I love fishing, but I suck at it in real life. Don't we all? That's to be the definition. I used to fish all the time when I was a kid with my dad. And like when I grew up and I like, you know, got my own place and moved out, I remember he bought me like my own pair, and I was older and after college and stuff. And he bought me a pair of hip waders and a nice, like a nice, not a fly rod, but like we don't fly fish around here so much, but a nice rod for trout fishing. And I tried to go out and do it as an adult without my dad, and it was such a failure. I just kind of gave up on it. So anyways. I hate creation of magical items. The whole point is because players want to build X character, and it ruins some of the joy of exploring and playing out the game because some GMs were stingy. So true story, Steven. When I played my big, massive 20-level mega dungeon where in Pathfinder 1, and there was really no plot or rules. The only thing was I told the players, this game is about the dungeon. So we're not going to be adventuring in the world. We're not going to be dealing. The game is in the dungeon. I got rid of crafting entirely, including magical item crafting, specifically because I wanted players to have to, again, I'm aligning the rewards with what I wanted the party to do. I wanted the party to explore the dungeon. And if the party wanted cool, weird, unique stuff, they had to go in the dungeon to get it. Now, they also brought back gold, and I did have a magical item market in the town, but the magical item market was random. And every week, new items got added, some items got taken off. And those items, you know, could be powerful, they might be shit, but they were just generic items and from the store. So you didn't get that sense of like, I want to customize and get exactly the items that I want. But I promised them that the items that they found in the dungeon would be weird and powerful and unique and were always very interesting. And the net of it was the party responded and said, yeah, we do love these items and we do want to go into the dungeon. And we're always interested in finding a new level, going lower, cracking into a secret vault, magical vault, because we want the power of the cool items that are in your game. We don't want to just, you know, build out the character that we built 7 months ago on Path Builder and see it realized now in the game. I mean, GM Scott makes a great point here that in PF2, it literally is just a flavor thing, because the problem with GM Scott, I don't even think you fully realize this, though. The amount of time, if you spend a lot of time and you save 50%, the game rules say that you could have spent the same amount of time earning income using your craft check, and you would have earned the same amount of money. So by working on the item, you're also not earning item in that downtime or earning income in that downtime. So it's a wash. So basically, someone without any of the crafting feats could just go for the same amount of time that you're crafting. They could just earn money. And then at the end of your crafting period, you're like, haha, I bought this for 50% off. And then the other person says, yeah, I had to pay full price, but I earned 50% of the money by earning income that you did. And so I also essentially paid half as much as well. Yeah, it stretches the all limits of imagination, Marcos. I mean, I will fully agree. Lance Quagmire, a player in that big 20 level mega dungeon, mentioned the infinite stabs of swarming insects, which did come up a lot. Griffin says the Middle Earth supplement I would refer to was Adventures in Middle Earth for 5e and their travel system. It's from Cubicle 7. Yes, that is the one. I'm looking for it. Oh, there it is. Now, I think this is out of print because I think they lost the license. But this had some pretty cool travel rules, actually, this game. And I thought they were really well done. So, very cool game. Very cool system. So, I agree, Griffin. Very good. Luigi asks, what's your thoughts on fun versus metagaming? And I understand too much meta can break the game or play. How do you feel that meta, but do you feel that meta is a complete no-go? Oh, no, Luigi. No. I dare say I almost encourage metagaming. I want my players to feel like they're playing a game. It's called a role-playing game. It's not called tabletop role-playing. I mean, you watch some people play, you watch some channels, it's just tabletop role-playing. It's not tabletop role-playing game. I lean into the game element of it. I enjoy games. I enjoy board games. I enjoyed card games. I used to enjoy video games. I enjoy role-playing games. And I think playing it and referring to it as a game is not a sin in the way that people think it is. And I think it has been needlessly crucified in this modern era where people are very, very much in this mindset that like it's all about the story, and it's not. How about that? It's not always about the story. Sometimes it's about getting together with your friends, cracking a few brews, and playing a fun game and laughing, and nothing is serious. And I mean, that is how D&D was born. That's how role-playing games were born. And what they have converted into is great for some people, but it's not for everybody. And dare I say, the game that they are using to play it with is not very good for that either. So, you know, I think play the game the way it was meant to be played. And you don't have to be a complete like idiot or jerk about it, but I think people try too hard to turn this into some sort of acting experience, and it's not. It's a game. It's a game first. Everything else comes second. I'm seeing a bunch of stuff here. Silver Wolf, what don't you have on that bookshelf? I mean, there's some other stuff. I have some stuff that's still in storage, but you know, I will admit that over the last couple of years, I wasn't really working. I was trying to like start my own businesses, and those did not do well, by the way. But especially my photography business in a land of COVID. But I had switched to sort of getting PDFs for a while. And I really regret that because, like, even if I own a game in a PDF, like, I want it in hardback. I mean, nothing for me beats flipping through a book in real life, you know, with the actual pages. So, love it. I think it is ridiculous that characters grew up in a world with monsters that would know nothing about them. I agree. I mean, this is going back to that metagame question where, yeah, I think that we as people in our world, like, we know so much about everything around us. Like, I never played baseball growing up. I never played, in Little League or Pony League. I never played. I have been to probably less than 10 Major League Baseball games in my entire life. I don't own a closet full of jersey gear. I couldn't tell you all of the players in Major League Baseball, but I know the rules for baseball. Like it's not out of the craze. So when I think about what a character in a fantasy world, and not just a character, but an adventurer would know in a fantasy world, like I give them a lot more credit than a lot of game systems, GMs, and players give them. Yeah, and Damien says, if you don't want players to metagame your monsters, make unique monsters. I think you could push that too far. I think the cult of the new can be a little bit overwhelming as well. I think adventure paths actually do this all too often. They keep throwing new weird monsters. Look at our adventure path. It comes with 5 new monsters, and it's like they're doing this as a selling point. And it's like there's this, maybe I'm wrong here, but like I think being like, oh, I recognize that monster, I know how to beat that monster, is part of the fun of role-playing games. Don't get me wrong, like you need to get that experience brand new. But I think people oversell how like the gotcha, like it's like the number one most fun way to play role-playing games is for your players to have absolutely no fucking clue what's going on, and everything is just happening to them, and they're like, I didn't know it could do that. I didn't know it could do that. Oh my God, I'm just running around like a chicken with my head cut off because I have no idea what's going on. And I just don't agree with that. I think that like when especially for these people who are supposed to be protagonists, they are supposed to be capable. So many role-playing games just make adventurers look like just little children, like incompetent fools, whether it's with like critical fumble rules or with the nothing. It's like these are supposed to be our heroes, our champions. And it's like almost like the game systems and a lot of players and GMs treat them like they're the butts of bad jokes. So Kieran says, I'm glad to see the TTRPGs or games movement picking up steam. Is it? I mean, it might be picking up steam here because you're hanging out with us on the Patreon Discord, but even if you prioritize role-playing, it's still a game and you need to treat it as such. 100%. But I don't know if it's picking up steam. I feel like shows like Critical Role have actually pushed it far in the other direction. And so I think a lot of people who are new to the hobby are just looking at it as like, hey, what the hell? Like, this game is about telling stories and all this other stuff. Griffin. Yeah. So obviously tonight was supposed to be our Rise of the Rune Lords AP, but we have set certain financial goals for the channel that we would like to use in order to continue to expand what we're able to offer to the channel, to our patrons. And so to that end, I have several weekly and monthly goals that, are kind of important to me in terms of sort of gauging and judging progress. So as we sort of, kind of move in and kind of, go down the line, I think that's kind of what we're trying to, that's what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to figure out a way and figure out the best way to grow this Patreon. And one of the things I know that we'd love to be able to do is start figuring out a way to produce high quality, good monthly content that we can make available to our patrons at some point. And I don't know exactly what form or shape that's going to take, but a big part of the way we do that is through support from our existing patrons and through donations and tips. Also, the more successful these live streams are, quite frankly, it's easier for me to kind of figure out ways to prioritize them and make sure that they're available to them. Our Rise of the Rune Lords AP last week did incredibly well, but I also certainly love to, be able to give out those kind of, this kind of advice as well. So if anything, it's appreciative more than anything, but, I don't know. Will this ever be a full-time job for me? No, I don't think it could be. I have a pretty sweet job, but I do think that there are some things that I want to do with the channel that really can only happen if it's financially viable to do so. And so asking for support from donations from folks like you all and the generosity of those of you who are able to donate and do so is greatly appreciated. So. Luigi says, how big of a tip to get into a game? That's not even something I'm offering my patrons right now. Let's talk.
GM Scott tipped $20.31. I hate seeing progress bars that don't make progress.
Well, thank you, GM Scott. That was very nice of you. Very much appreciate you. Already basically sucked you off earlier, so I'm just going to say thank you, sir. You're very, 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 very awesome, and we're a big fan of GM Scott within the Knights of Last Call. But did so, by the way, at 9:59, so 1 minute before technically wrap. But I'm going to try to answer some of these questions, so for sure. So let me go back to what Luigi was saying before GM Scott so rudely interrupted me with that extremely generous tip. Thank you, GM Scott. There's a trend. I mean, if we look at other patrons, Patreons of content creators out there on the internet, they all have these higher tiers where they allow other, patrons or supporters to play in games with them. And sometimes these are very high, like hundreds of dollars to play in a game with this content creator. And you also see the rise now of the professional DM. There's a number of websites that if you Google search professional DM, you will find these websites that you'll pay money and they'll put you in with some sort of pro DM. Who knows what that means? And you're paying for this experience. I get it, right? Scarcity. GMs have limited time. People are willing to pay for that time. I mean, that's basically the premise of any professional service-based industry, right? I do woodworking as a side. Now it's a side hobby. I don't give those tables away for free. I charge people for my time. So I guess it's the same thing, and my skill. But it does feel a little weird for me because role-playing games are so much more than just a business model to me that I've always felt very strange about taking money to run a game. So I don't know yet how or where we're going to end up with that, but for right now, my games are closed. So maybe that'll change in the future, but I'm just not ready. Just not ready yet. David asks, what is your favorite party of GMing? David, I'm not really quite sure what that question means. Do you mean like what's my favorite adventuring party makeup to make or play? I don't know. I don't know if you saw this a little late. I'm sorry. I don't 100% know what this question means. Okay, thanks. I'm dumb. What is your favorite part of GMing? My favorite part of GMing, what do I enjoy most? My favorite part of GMing is having to think on my feet, being creative in the moment, and responding to what my players are doing, and trying to put together all these literally randomly generated, disparate ideas, and finding a thread that connects them all so that everybody around the table goes, yeah, that's totally it. That's completely awesome. Like when you can figure out a way that all this random nonsense that you're generating somehow makes a kind of cohesive story, and it's no story that you would have ever come up with on your own, and it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for everyone at the table around you, like that moment is so awesome. And those are always the stories and the stuff that I personally retell time and time again, to the point where I have friends who weren't even there, but they could tell the story as if they were because it's been told so many times. So I love having to think on my toes, and I love having to try to make sense out of this randomness and craziness and make something out of it that like is a cool and fun story. And I think that is by far the best part. Brutus says, as a potential tip reward and community engagement tool, you can look at having homebrew contests on the Discord, and then we can tip those things into the game. That's also a pretty cool idea. I agree. I mean, Brutus, I am intimidated by the skill and quality of the GMs on the Discord. I mean, there are folks out there like Rubicon and Edril and Ben who are just running so many games for everyone just here in the Discord. Some players have like this encyclopedic knowledge, from old standbys like like Vin to some newer people like November. Just really crazy how much skill and effort goes into the Discord already. So I do think having people design stuff and having it actually be in our actual play game though would be pretty sweet. So let's see. All right, we're going to start trying to wrap up here. Indestructiboy, a 5e designer, is pushing the TTRPGs are games narrative. Was just watching his Runekeeper stream earlier, and he was getting flack, but really fought the anti-gamification crowd. Okay. I'll have to check him out. Indestructiboy. I don't know him. So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of 5e people out there right now. It's a huge market. But, yeah, I mean, I'm big into that. My favorite thing about role-playing games is that I love games, but sometimes the games can feel a little flat, because you're making smart moves, and I have a great game of Magic, but that's it. It's over, it's done with. It didn't mean anything, and by applying sort of these fictional narrative worlds and people to what is essentially a fun game, you just make that game so much more potent and strong, and I love it. Damien, it wouldn't be this live stream without Damien plugging us, and I will take his lead. If you've enjoyed this conversation tonight and you are not a current, thank you, Luigi. Awesome. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. Thank you. Hopefully I was able to give you some sort of guidance or answer. Very much appreciate you tipping us there, and thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this conversation and you enjoyed these thoughts, this is what we do 24/7, all day, every day. Our Discord, our Patreon, is just a couple of bucks if you want to play in the Discord. If you want access to all the other cool behind the scenes stuff, extra footage, extra videos, our exclusive Q&A for just our patrons, that's a couple bucks more. And if you really want to support us and you really want to be part of this community, keep joining these live streams, but also think about taking a look at that Discord offering and as part of our Patreon. It is pretty awesome. And we're a small channel. We're very responsive. We're still growing. So it's a great opportunity for you to sort of have a really good direct connection to us. I'm a member of some other Patreons, and especially when they're free, there's so many people in there. It's hard to actually get one-on-one time with some of the people that you want to. But honestly, any of the people in our Discord some of them are better GMs than I ever could hope to be. So they just don't have fancy cameras. So, that's the way it goes. Felipe, thank you very much. Appreciate your warm welcome. And we love you. I'm happy to see that you've been coming into our streams, and that's been pretty awesome. Thank you, Chef. Awesome. Yeah, I if we had a goal here, it's just to share and spread ideas. And not everything is going to be, part of. It's not going to work for everybody. It's not going to work for every group. But if it works for you, then, so much the better. Griffin, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just doing your bit. Well, it is extremely appreciated. Very, very, very humbling. It's awesome. And happy to have you here. Happy to have you supporting us, and love all of you for coming out and spending this time with me. I'm sorry that we didn't get a play tonight. Thank God everyone is fine, but these things happen, and we'll try to figure out a way maybe to, they say the show must go on, and we're going to look into some ways that we can try to future proof. Obviously if I don't show up, it's kind of difficult, but honestly, maybe we just tap one of these other GMs and say, hey, Derek's out sick, the show must go on. Somebody else is going to step in and run it. But I don't even know what that would be like. But we'll take advantage of the opportunities that we can. But but the good news is we are going to be back next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. And and it's going to be a hey, thanks Total Entropy, love it, thank you, appreciate you, thank you so much. Total Entropy, you say some good stuff, man. You need to chat more with us so we can share some ideas. I love some of the stuff that Total Entropy has said on the thing. So don't use Ben. is what GM Scott said. Yeah, we just kill everybody. Thank you, Blueberry. Awesome. Robert, your game was canceled tonight too. You know what? It does happen. William Brandis, Derek, good news. We found you bad news. Bad news. It was Ben, and your campaign is now over. You guys were laughing at these statements here. William Brandis, okay? This William Brandis, that literally happened to me once, okay? I was DMing a campaign. I couldn't come one Friday. He said, "Don't worry, I've read that adventure. I'll run it for you. I'll run a different part of it." And I said, "Okay, that's great. You're an experienced DM, and I trust you." And then the next day, later that night, I goes, "Yeah, sorry. I think your campaign is over now. Also, one of our friends may never come back and never did, and several party members are dead. And it's probably better if we just end that campaign entirely." And that actually happened. So you always got to be, got to be careful. Matthew says he tried to watch Critical Role, found it highly overrated. That's my take as well. Is it fun? Are they good? Yeah, it's great. They're a very capable bunch. They seem like a very nice group of people with some really wonderful charities that they support. I'm sure they're very good at their jobs. Their voice acting seems to be good in the games and roles in which they perform it at. But is it everything that I think it cracked out to be? Nah, not so much. I don't think actual plays are in general. Like, is this channel successful? Yes. I mean, hopefully we'll be more successful? I hope so. Should this thing ever make millions of dollars? No, stop. It's stupid. So I do need to check out the animated show, though. I mean, if I can watch 400 hours worth of RPGs into just a short period of time, I'm okay for that. I've heard it's very rude, vulgar, though. I don't know if I love that. It's not like I'm some sensitive person about it, but it's like, I don't like the super vulgar cartoons. Maybe I'm just an old-fashioned person, but it's like the Rick and Morty and stuff in the South Park. I never got into that, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Total Entropy. I wasn't yelling at you, but I'm just saying, you should participate. We like it. We like it in there. That Lance Quagmire got it right. Something having to do with the Book of Vile Darkness entered the campaign, and before you know it, the campaign was over. The only voices I want in my actual plays are the inbred ogres. Alas. It's a good thing for plot purposes that I kind of breezed over the whole going inside of the Grawl family household and dealing with like Mama Grawl and all that other stuff. Yeah, kind of vulgar. It's fun. Yeah, Scanlan. It's got potty humor elements. Feels almost forced. And Robert, this is something that I trust and I've heard from a lot of people who are much more familiar with Critical Role than me, which is that the season 3 or campaign 3 has been very, very slow going and a bit slow. All right, finally at the end of the chat log. So, work to do. More work? All right. Stop clicking on me. I also played a lot of Warcraft. We will be back Thursday. Look for the invite. It'll probably be around 7:30, something, 8 o'clock. Always worry about running into Critical Role. Although people have said like, no, I want to watch you talk about the spells. Because at this point, like I said, I could get 3 viewers and I don't care. I am going through all of these spells and we are going to rate them all as a community and together. And we will do it because the people who have spoken say that it must be done and we will do it. Job's done. And we will do it until the job's done. More what? Quit picking on me. Don't you have something better to do? But yeah, we'll hey, there he is. There he is. Hey, Deadly D8. Look at you. Anyways, we will see you guys Thursday for more of our fun streaming. Deadly D8, you caught one of these live. We're wrapping up, buddy, You were scarily good at these voices. Actual voice actor confirmed. No, more like super nerd who played entirely too much. Warcraft 2, Tides of Darkness, Warcraft 2, Through the Dark Portal, Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, and of course, the subsequent expansions to follow after it. always fashionably late, but you're in time, for the send off. So I appreciate you coming in anyways. And actually, I was talking about earlier about how I still might want to reach out to you about doing something for our animation or something for our Horizon Thunder Sphere. So the other thing apparently that we are trying to get done is it's a bit of a theme or a bit of a meme on our Discord is that Pathfinder math is tight. And if you've ever seen Ryan George, he does the Screen Rants skits. Just look him up on Google or YouTube. And he has a part of his skit where he always goes like, whatever they're talking about, the producer will go, "Oh, shields that return to you are tight," or claws that come out of your hands are tight. And I'm like, I want to find out if there's a way I can get him to say, Pathfinder math is tight. So I don't even know if that's possible, but he's got like 1 million subs. So I don't know if maybe there's a way we can get into his DMs somehow, but anyways, actually, Felipe mentioned the podcast that Deadly D8 put out, and I have it queued up. I haven't actually listened to it yet, but everything that Deadly D8 produces is incredible. So go check out him, if for no other reason than to see the awesome edit he did of a Knights of Last Call episode. But he's got a lot of really good stuff on there, and really good to check out. So definitely give a good search for the old Deadly D8 on YouTube, and follow him. All right, everybody. Thank you for weathering the storm with us. I'm glad you're able to join us. And the Knights of Last Call, of course, appreciate you very, very much. To all of our patrons who came out to support us tonight, you guys mean the world to us. The community that you're helping us build is the realization of a dream that I've had for many, many, many years, to sort of be able to, when I was a kid, I wanted to own my own comic book store. Of course, retail's kind of dead, so this is the virtual version of that. But what I really wanted to do was build a community where like-minded individuals can sort of share and converse and sort of build on each other. I've always loved going to Origins and Gen Con because I love being surrounded by so many people who are just as passionate and caring and loving about these games that I am. And it's almost like I get to live that every day now, because the people that we have sort of built this Knights of Last Call Patreon community around are just as passionate, just as interested as I am. I'm not even the highest ranked person on my own Discord. So there are literally people that care more about this than me. And it's very humbling. And I love them for it. And I love you all for joining me tonight. So I will give you a Horizon Thunder Sphere to go. And then I'm going to peace out. So with that being said, we'll catch you on the flip side. Horizon.